So about a month ago, I released a video about which programming language you should learn first. And I did a lot of research about it, and then I also looked at my own experiences as a software developer, and then I gave some general guidance about it. And then I gave one recommendation, and that was, if you don't really know which programming language to learn first, I recommended C. And then I got this comment. So I got this comment from TTRev007, and they talked about why they chose Python. Basically, they said that Python is an easier language to learn, and if you're just a beginner, you don't want to get discouraged from learning a more difficult language. I think there's a lot of truth behind what TTRev007 is saying, and I've heard this reasoning a lot, but despite that, I still recommend C. And in this video, I'll give a detailed breakdown on why I think beginners should still start with C. So let's get started. By the way, if you're in the early stages of your programming journey, I've got a special gift for you. It's called my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a guide that will take you from no coding experience to building your first 4 projects. And the best part is it's free. It's a free gift to you. In this coding challenge, I guide you in 30 days to build 4 programming projects, and I give you some tutorials that are in C. But of course, these projects are really generic and really beginner friendly, and so you can actually code them in different programming languages. You can still benefit from this guide because you can just take the principles that are in my challenge and then apply them to your programming language. You can find the challenge in the link in the description, and if you download it and pay attention to what it says, you'll definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts that will give you a good foundation to your software development journey. Alright, the number one reason why I believe beginners should start with C is because C helps you understand how computers think. Say you're planning to become a professional chef. Wouldn't you want to learn how to bake cookies from scratch versus buying the cookie mix from the grocery store? Python is like getting that cookie mix, and C is like learning it from scratch. Learning how to bake cookies from scratch is gonna be hard, but it's gonna be worth it because you're gonna know why these certain ingredients go together and what proportions make sense and how to tune those proportions to make a better cookie. C is gonna be harder than Python because C is closer to the hardware, so C is gonna require more knowledge about how the computer works. Python is nice because it takes care of all of that hardware stuff for you, so you don't really have to think about it as much. But that's why I think C is important to start with, because if you're learning how to code in Python and you're not considering the hardware when you're coding, it can lead to bad practices. But if you start with C, you can start coding with the hardware in mind, and then you'll have better coding practices that will lead on when you start learning other languages. One of the special characteristics of C is that it has pointers. When you're starting to learn how to use pointers, you may get frustrated at first, but it's a really powerful tool, and it gives you a basic understanding of how values are stored in a computer. Knowing how these values are stored in your computer is going to be key when you start learning more advanced programming concepts. This is why many universities start with C when teaching programming concepts to new students. For example, my university started with C, and it was a freshman level class, so we were only like 18 or 19 years old when we were learning C. And if you look at CS50 from Harvard University, this is their introduction to computer science, they start with C also. To be fair, they start in week 0 in Scratch, but the rest of the weeks after that are C, and then they go into Python after. I also want to highlight a response that I got when I asked this question on Reddit. Would you recommend C to beginners? And to be fair, I asked this question on the C programming subreddit. It says, when I started, I was constantly advised to use high-level programming languages like Python. The few times I asked something like, what's C? I was assured that was only for geniuses and needed to stay far away. All advisors were adamant and confident their advice was good as gold. It completely screwed up my understanding of computers, what they can do, how they do it, how quickly they can do it, etc. for years. I see my years spent on higher level languages as a complete waste of time. I wouldn't say that spending time on higher level languages is a complete waste of time, but you get the idea here. This leads me to my second reason why beginners should start learning how to code in C, and that is because C gives you a good foundation for learning other languages. Many modern languages like C# and Java and even Python have borrowed some concepts and syntax from C. When you know how to code in C and you start learning other languages, you quickly realize that a lot of things that you've done in C, you can actually do in other languages too, and you can actually do it a lot faster and a lot simpler in those other languages. When I look back at my career, I always say that C was the most important class that I took in college. When I graduated college and entered my first job, the only programming language that I knew was C. And then they put me on a project where I had to code in C++. And I was able to do that because of my background. But then they put me on Python, and I had to learn that. Then they put me on Python, C++, and Java. And then they made me in charge of the GUI, so I had to spend most of my time in Java. And then they moved me on to Android development, which is also in Java. And then they put me in web development, and then I had to learn JavaScript. And then after about 5 or 6 years, they decided to let me start working in C again, and they put me on a project where I could code in C. And then when I went to my second job, I knew how to code in C, C++, Python, Java, JavaScript, and then they asked me to code in C#. So I could code in all these different languages, I could pick them up really fast, and this because I had a good background in C. It's a lot harder for someone who only knows Python to start coding in C than it is for someone who already knows C to move and to start coding in Python. And if you're going to be a software developer, you have to be really adaptable and you have to know how to pick up other languages. And if you have C as your first language, as the only language you know, then picking up other languages isn't going to be a problem. There's this article on Course Report about low-level programming, and I really wanted to highlight this quote from a guy named Arthur. He says, "All higher-level languages like Python, JavaScript, etc. are built out of C. By understanding how they work under the hood, I can better write my high-level code to act in accordance with its internal design, providing superior application performance with deep awareness of errors. Also, because C is so rigorous, when switching to a higher-level language, the programmer has the feeling of taking off weights and experiencing a sense of expressive ease." And I can attest that's exactly how I felt when I was at my first job. Alright, now the final reason why I believe beginners should start learning how to code in C is because C has a long-lasting impact in the programming world. It was created in 1972 by Dennis Ritchie, and then it was adapted to C++, but it has influenced C#, Python, JavaScript, and Java. The only type of software development that still uses it today is embedded software development. And C is still used in that field because C gives you more access to the hardware. And if you really want to be efficient when using the hardware, you have to stick with C. C is a really efficient language. So even though today C isn't used as much as it was before, it still has a place today, and that just shows how important the C language is, that it's able to last this long from 1972. So the last thing I'll say about this topic is everyone is learning Python, Java, and JavaScript. If you really want to stand out, you should learn C. And when you learn C, you'll be part of a special club of programmers. Alright, that's it for this week's video. I hope I've convinced you to start learning how to code in C. And even though you're going to a different software development field where you don't have to know C, I think C will give you that good foundation to be a good, proficient software developer. Alright, like I mentioned earlier, if you're just starting off in your programming journey and you don't know where to start, you can download my 30-day beginner coding challenge. And it's a 30-day guide where I teach you how to build those 4 beginner programming projects. It's really beginner friendly, and I go step by step on how to build each one and go through the tutorials that you need to build each one. So download that in the link in the description. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it really helped you out. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section and I'll be sure to answer you there. And if this video helped you, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.